Awesome. So here we are using psychology for smarter spending. I'm Toffler, the founder of Prosperity Wellbeing. I'm a financial wellness coach and I teach financial literacy and how to spend, save, and invest according to your values. This field trip is very much in a workshop format, as I alluded to before. I'm not going to be talking too much, as the focus will really be on guiding you through a series of exercises that include self-reflection, journaling, observation, and some creative brainstorming, which I'm sure is probably everybody's favorite part. Because each part builds on the previous, please ask your questions as they come up, and if they're specific to the activity at the moment, I'll answer them right away. I really want to ensure you all get the most value out of this field trip. Are you ready? All right, let's get started. It'll come as no surprise that most of us, at least here in the US, live in a highly consumerist society. We're exposed to hundreds of advertisements per day, and media and brands have truly infiltrated every corner of our psyche. But what if we could take back our mental space? What if we could develop our own lens and our own filter for how we approach spending? What if that lens was grounded in our own personal values, not peer pressure or keeping up with the Joneses? What if we used our goals and our commitment to social and environmental causes to guide the flow of our money? What might that mean for you personally? What about for our culture? All right, so our outcomes for today. By the end, you'll have identified and written about some of your core values and current goals. You'll have clarity on whether your spending is meaningful to you, and ideas for ways to make changes in your monthly outlay, if you choose to, whether that be saving more or putting money towards something that's more important to you. To make sure we're all on the same page and you know what to expect today, here's a quick overview of what we're going to cover. First, you're going to explore what's truly important to you. These are your values. Second, you'll review a couple of goals that you're pursuing. Third, what social and environmental issues do you care about? If you haven't given this any thought before, don't worry, I have guidelines for how to do that. Fourth, what is your recent spending telling you? Fifth, does your spending line up with the real you? And finally, some creative brainstorming. What changes might you want to make? Okay, I know we've covered this before, so I'm going to go through this real quick. If you haven't already taken the time to grab everything, here's your moment. Pen and paper, journal, whatever you like, digital notepad. Your statements. I've been asked what's the best statement to grab, and it's really the one that has the most insight on your spending, whichever one has the most number of transactions, that's fairly recent and comprehensive. That'll give you, with the most details, will give you the most information to work with. And it's also a lot easier, as Megan mentioned at the beginning, to have them printed, but if that's not an option, you can just use an edible PDF reader so that you can mark them up. And highlighter if you're doing the printed version. Okay, so let's go on. I've mentioned values a lot, but I think really the question is, what are values? How do we define and understand them? And so here are two definitions. The first one comes from Oxford English Dictionary. One's judgment of what is important in life. The second one comes from Brené Brown. Beliefs that help you find your way in the dark. So go ahead and keep those in mind as we continue. So in a moment here, I'm going to put up a list of possible values that actually comes from Brené Brown and her book, Dare to Lead. I'm going to invite you to identify 3 values from this list that comes up. Think about these as beliefs that are most important to you or key principles that guide your life. I'll give you about 3 minutes to choose. These don't necessarily need to be the only values you live by, but try to choose the top 3 that you embody and that guide your actions and decisions. When you've selected your 3, give me a thumbs up in the chat or post which values you chose. That'll let me know you're ready for the next step. See, a lot of you are really fast at this. I'm going to give about 30 or 45 more seconds for the people who aren't quite so quick. Awesome. I see a lot of amazing values. I really, really appreciate all of you guys sharing your values, and the thumbs up confetti was fun too. So thank you all for that. Next, we're going to do a values writing exercise. And I want to give a little context on this. There's two researchers, Cohen and Sherman, in the early 2000s who had groups of students, young adults, and others write about their values. They found that doing so generated a positive view of the self among these participants and caused them to engage in pro-social behaviors that not only benefited the participants themselves, but also their community. This research is known as self-affirmation theory and has been widely studied and written about in both the psychology and sociology literature. In fact, so much so, Brené Brown has also used it in her teachings. So I'm going to share the writing prompts and then give you another 2 to 3 minutes to do your own reflection and journaling. You're going to choose just one of the 3 values that you identified and that you live by in your life. And then you'll write 1 to 2 sentences answering each of these questions. Why is this value important to you? What's an example of a time when you were fully living into this value? When you're done, in the chat, post a writing emoji or type done so I know we're ready to go on. I see some people have wrapped up, and I also see a couple of people are still writing, so I'll give you about 20 or 30 more seconds to finish up before we'll go on. Awesome. Okay, cool. So on to goals. If you've already done a goal setting exercise and you have those goals handy, you can go ahead and review them. These can be life, career, health, relationships, whatever. If you don't have any goals already set, then I'm going to encourage you to write down something that you'd like to accomplish in the next year or two. And whether you're revisiting goals or are creating a new one, write them on the same paper or journal as where you just did your values writing. It's helpful if you keep it all together. Amalia, to answer your question, we're doing them all right now. So yeah, don't feel bad if you didn't do that. If you haven't ever done any of this before, we're doing it all together right now. So what they say with goals is that you're more likely to accomplish them just by looking at them, and writing them down again increases your likelihood of success. So hoping that if nothing else from this workshop, you have a chance to strengthen your commitment to your goals. So I'll give you about a minute or so for this. Awesome. Looks like we're getting done. And Megan, thanks for your help answering that question. Okay, next, we're going to take a moment to think of 2 or 3 social or environmental issues that are important to you. If you don't have any ideas, I find that the UN Sustainable Development Goals can be a nice framework for this. So you can imagine these however you want, because this could be a whole hour-long presentation on its own. So this is just for inspiration. And go ahead and look at this or whatever already exists in your heart and your mind, and make a quick note about them on the same paper or the same journal as your goals and your values. And then if you are willing, I would love to have you post in the chat what causes you care about. You can name them or have fun choosing an emoji that represents them. I love seeing what's important to you all. Plus, then I'll know when it's time to go on. Really cool. Thanks for sharing, y'all. It's fun to see what you all are passionate about. Okay, we're about to go on to the next section where we're going to be looking at our spending. So I want to pause here and see if there are any questions and make sure everyone is caught up. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so now it's time to pull out your credit or debit card statement. Hopefully you got it handy before we started. So you need to be able to write on them, whether you do it on paper or editable PDF. Get everything ready now, including your pen and highlighter. Megan, you're a little ahead of me. It's all good. Okay, so it's time to begin the review of your credit or bank statement. We're going to start with looking at the essentials. These are the things you have to pay each month to live. So that's typically your rent or your mortgage, although that may not show up on your credit card statement. Utilities, groceries, debts, medical care, expenses related to transportation for work. For people, this might also be pet food. Okay, and so what you're going to do is take a pen and put a plus next to those. I invite you to go through your statement and do that now, and you'll have about 2 to 3 minutes for this. Cindy, that's a good question. It's really hard to disambiguate that. So I would say put a plus next to it and call it an essential expense. Amalia, I'm not quite sure of your question. Okay, so Tamara, with the question about what's groceries and what's eating out, I'm hoping that by the name of the business that you made the charge, you can determine if it was groceries, and so that would be an essential expense. And if it's eating out, we're going to look at that in the next activity. So just pause on the eating out ones. I get you, Cindy. I know Costco is a kind of everything shop. Again, I'm gonna let you answer that question, and I see a lot of people looking at me, so I think that means we're ready to move on, that we've covered the essentials. Okay, in reviewing your monthly spending, you should now have a plus sign next to the essential expenses. As we talked about, these are your groceries, utilities, medical care, housing, debt payments, and transportation for work. So it's time to look at the values writing exercise again. So look at your 3 chosen values, as well as the phrases that you wrote about one of those values in your life. You're also going to want to briefly review the goals that you had written down and your social or environmental causes. So let's just go ahead and combine the idea of those last two, your goals and your causes, and call them your vision. Vision of where you want to go and the world you want to see. Okay, so with all of that in front of you, you're invited to look through your spending again. This time, for each line item that helped you express your values, moved you towards your goals, or in some way allowed you to support your preferred social or environmental causes, you're going to put a check mark next to those. You'll need to use your discretion here. This is where it gets even more difficult than the essentials. And you'll have to just decide whether a given expense was in alignment with your values or your vision. If you're uncertain or feel the spending was maybe kind of sort of in service of your values or vision, then you can put a circle next to it. For example, if connection is a top value for you and you have a meal out with friends that allowed you to feel connected with them, put a check next to it. But if you grabbed a quick meal on the go and time or efficiency are not among your top values, then don't put any marks next to it. So you'll continue through your whole statement to look for items that are aligned with your values and vision. And just so you know, at the end, I expect you to have a fair few unmarked items. It's totally fine to have a lot of items that you haven't marked. And then in the end, I expect your statement will look something like this. I'll give you about 5 to 8 minutes to complete, and give me a check mark in the chat when you're finished. Does another minute or so sound good? I think people are starting to wrap up. I'm seeing more chats come in. Okay. I can see that was definitely an interesting experiment for a lot of people. So at this point, you should probably have between 20 to 70% of the line items on your statements with no marks next to them. And of course, that'll vary for every individual. I think I saw somebody that said they had marks next to everything on their statement. So we'll talk about that in a minute too. But if you did find that there was a number of items on your statement without any marks next to them, what do you see? What do you notice about them? Some things that people find are one-time events or big expenses, patterns among the unmarked items, such as coffee shops, nights out, delivery services, impulse spending, or salon treatments. Other times it's underutilized subscriptions for something they don't really read, watch, or use very much. So here's what you're going to do. We get to finally use the highlighter. So highlight any patterns you see. Highlight anything that doesn't already have a mark next to it, and especially the ones that appear multiple times. These might be subscriptions or takeout and delivery, apps or games for your phone, dining, shopping, drinking. I'll give you about a minute for this. This is usually pretty quick. So in other groups that I've done this with, one example that comes up a lot is coffee shops. And I'm curious by a quick show of hands if anyone else found that they have a lot of repeat spending on coffee. Okay. All right, cool. So it's a good theme. I like the consistency here. Okay, we're gonna go back and take another look at the items that have been highlighted. What do you notice? Are there certain themes that are starting to emerge? For example, around feelings or experiences or repetitive spending? When I look a little deeper at my own spending, I often find an emotion. And for me, that's usually fear. And I think that's one of the things that advertising does to us. But when we take ourselves mentally back to the moment of purchase, often we may realize there was an underlying feeling present then. That's one of the ways advertisers get us. It's not the logical rationalizing or justifications we do, but real, raw, uncomfortable emotions. Some examples I've noticed are fear, loneliness, stress, a desire to feel included or connected or worthy, a sense of dread, sometimes that's around our own mortality, a desire for prestige, or just a pressure to keep up. So take a look at yours and see what you notice. I want to pause for a moment. This exercise can bring up some stress or guilt and maybe even shame. It can also reveal a lot of the feelings we had when swiping the card, because sometimes spending money is an attempt to cover up those feelings that we don't want. Perhaps it's boredom, loneliness, or anxiety. So we're going to take a moment here and offer ourselves love, self-compassion, or forgiveness. Self-compassion is a gift you give yourself, and it doesn't cost anything. Here's a super simple way to offer yourself compassion. It's a variation on the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. So when a troubling feeling comes up or you remember an incident that triggers a feeling, lean into that feeling or the memory for just a tiny moment, then put a hand over your heart and say to yourself, I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you. I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you. If this doesn't work for you, that's okay too. However you prefer to practice empathy and self-compassion towards yourself is also perfect. Okay, now that we've calmed the emotions and the nervous system a little bit, let's go back to the highlighted statement. Is there anything new that you're noticing among the highlighted items? Have you found new themes emerging? This could be other feelings, default patterns, certain people. Maybe you have a friend that leads you to overspend, or online impulse shopping is a bigger pull on your spending than you realized. Mostly, we've been looking at instances where we're spending too much on things that don't reflect our values or vision. But what about the opposite? Maybe you're realizing you aren't focusing enough of your spending on accomplishing your goals. Quick story. When I was first starting my business, I had big goals, well, still do. And I was frustrated that I didn't seem to be getting any closer to accomplishing them. I felt like I was just like going around in circles, beating my head against the wall. Then I did this exercise and realized that I hadn't been spending any money on my business. Unconsciously, I had convinced myself I could bootstrap my way to success. No wonder I wasn't reaching my goals, right? This was an eye-opener for me because it showed me I needed to spend money to learn the right things, to get in front of the right people, and to create systems and automation to be able to deliver to my prospects what they needed. So while some people may find they need to cut back on spending that isn't a reflection of their values, others may find they need to spend more on achieving their goals and vision for the world. And some may be both. Repurposing spending from areas that aren't aligned to focus more on areas that represent your values and vision. Becca, the vision was just me combining your goals and your social or environmental causes into one word for ease of the discussion and the flow. Okay, so with that in mind, it's time to do some creative brainstorming. we're going to take a couple of minutes to write down ideas for how we might want to shift our spending. But first, I'll give you a couple of examples. If you and your friends always go out for drinks and dinner, and connection is one value that you're trying to express here, perhaps you could try doing a potluck with food and drinks at a rotating house. Everyone will save some money, likely it'll be good for everyone's waistline, and it might even bring you closer. Or alternatively, you could try an outdoor activity like walking, a picnic, or a free concert instead of other more expensive options. Here's another example. If your social or environmental causes included sustainability or racial justice, could you shift some of your spending away from big box retailers toward more sustainable options or support more businesses owned by people of color? So now it's your turn. Think about some ways to repurpose your spending to better align with your values, or to reduce spending on items that are out of alignment. For the person who asked about, oh, I have marked everything on my statement and I don't have anything that's out of alignment, then you may want to look at the items with the circle next to them, since they're not your closest in alignment with your values and vision. And that could give you some ideas of things that aren't your top spending priorities, and so you could think about adjusting there. This also applies if you're really trying to dig deep into your spending and think about how to reallocate it. All of this isn't to say you can't ever spend money indiscriminately again, because certainly we all will. That's the push of our society. But this can be an effective way to free up money to pay down debt, to save more, to build an emergency fund, to achieve your vision for yourself, to contribute to social or environmental causes, or maybe to start investing. So I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes for this brainstorming. Can you give me a thumbs up when you're ready? All right, I see that some people are wrapping up, and we're coming towards the end, so I think it's time to go on. From your brainstorm list, choose 1 to 2 ideas that you want to implement and write down how and when you'll take action on them, plus how you'll know when you've succeeded. I'll give you about a minute for this. As you can see, I'm a big believer in aligning your money with your values and things you care about. And this is one way to start. Spend more on what truly matters to you and less on things you don't care about. You'll have access to this recording for 4 days. You can also repeat this whole process with your other card or bank statements, or do it on your own. But don't forget the values writing exercise at the beginning. So I would love to hear what you learned. What ahas or takeaways have you gained from this workshop? I invite you to share them in the chat. And finally, congratulations. This was a very full field trip. Celebrate yourself for all that you have accomplished here today. Thank you.